Hello everyone, this is Armstrong Williams on the right side.
Armstrong.
Don't curse, speak English.
Armstrong.
Virtuous society.
Armstrong.
I dare you to listen.
Hey, turn it up. Hey. Armstrong. Get on the right side. Armstrong.
Elevate your mind.
Armstrong.
I'm Armstrong Williams on the right side.
Yo, man, it's your boy K.O. And you're tuned in to the most conservative of our brothers.
The Armstrong Williams Show. Please give me a break. Grow up. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Armstrong Williams Show. Thank you so much for joining us as we are live on AM 730 WTNT and 102.9 FM. Let me, I'm really thrilled because I've had a chance to talk to this guest some time ago about creationism versus evolution. And our guest, Danniel Friedman, has written one of the best books I've read in a very long time, the Genesis 1 Code, where he spent just quality time, which actually I think shocked him in many ways, showing why absolutely creationism falls right in line with Genesis in the Bible, almost to the letter. I mean, he did his homework. It's fascinating. People were saying that animals were here long before humans were, billions of years, and he explains it in a way that even the unbeliever becomes convinced. I mean, I've never heard someone talk about creationism in such a provocative way. Let me welcome our guests to the Armstrong Williams Show. And we also have Robin Banks. Robin Banks. He literally robs banks. Robin Banks in the house. Danniel, welcome to the broadcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you don't have me on speaker, do you?
No.
Good. And we're on a landline, right?
Yes.
Very good. Talk to us about how you came to this project and what were your feelings about creationism and evolution before this commenced?
Sure. You know, I had a somewhat of a religious upbringing, of course familiar with Genesis, and it seemed to me that creation narrative should be not allegorical, but the truth. And at the same time, I went through a very significant scientific education, culminating in a master's in engineering physics, which exposed me to all the sciences. And I just had this belief that they're both describing the same thing. The science is describing creation. The Bible is describing creation. They've got to agree on what happened and when it happened. When was the universe made? When was the sun made? When were the animals made? They've got to agree on that. They might disagree on how, because science doesn't exactly know how things happen. Was it evolution or something else? But they had to agree on what and when. So I have been searching for that answer for quite a while. And in the Genesis 1 code, I was able to document where I'm at, which you've just described.
How do you find those answers?
It's a bit of first you have to have a bit of a concept, and the concept which is in the scriptures is that the Bible preceded creation and is actually the blueprint of creation. So, you know, when I have a blueprint for my home, I can find the closet or the room in the blueprint, and I can go and find it on the home. And if I find something on the home, I can go back to the blueprint and find it there. So, with the Bible as a blueprint and the earth as the earth of the universe as the real creation, they've got to correlate. But the key here is that for my blueprint to make any sense at all, I have to look in the bottom right-hand corner where it says that 1 inch is 8 feet. If I don't find that, I can't make any sense. It's just a piece of paper with a bunch of lines and drawings, and the house is quite a bit different. But once I find that scale factor, everything makes sense. So it all boils down to what is a creation day, because that's what's causing us the problem. The Bible describes very clearly a sequence of events. Science describes a sequence of events, but they're on a different scale factor. In science, we talk billions of years, and in Genesis, we talk 6 days, a little less than 6,000 years ago.
How did you reconcile that issue?
So I went looking for the scale. You know, the scale has to be in the blueprint. One other people have taken the approach, well, 6 days must be 13.7 billion years, therefore that's the answer. But that's not very convincing. The blueprint comes with a scale, so the scale has to be in the Bible. So I went looking in the Bible, motivated a little bit by scientific understanding, and the scientific understanding we have today comes from Einstein's theory of relativity that says that time is relative and we all have different clocks, and if I go on a spacecraft and you stay on Earth, I'm going to measure time differently than you will. And if you look at the Genesis account, there are two different narrations. One is by God prior to man, and one is by man. Lots of people have done lots of work about the Bible dates being about right with history, post-creation, when man is narrating and things are being kept according to man's clock. But prior to that, they're being kept according to God's clock, and there's no reason why His clock should be the same as our clock. And in fact, we're told in the Scriptures it's not the same. We're told in many passages that God's time is different. In particular, in Psalms, we're told that one of His days is 1,000 of our years. So I went looking for what a creation day might be, and what I discovered is it's a very, very simple formula that boils down to a creation day being about 2.5 billion years.
Okay, all right. It's as if you have a jigsaw puzzle, and the puzzle has to fit all the pieces in terms of this intelligent design. It has to all connect. When you first started this, when do you start getting exciting and things that connect? Some of the things that we don't even talk about that you discovered in Genesis that became very pivotal to what you were putting together, because what you're putting together is just absolutely unprecedented.
Yeah, that's correct. So, I was looking for the age of the universe. That's the kind of most famous number. It's 13.7 billion years. It's a pretty accurate number now from scientific measurement by satellites. And at a first read, the Bible says it's 6,000 years. It's quite far out from 13.7. So I was looking for what is the length of a day, and can I calculate from that the age of the universe? And when I did the work and I found the scale factor, it came out exactly to what the latest science was. And then I said, okay, well, now other things have to fit. So let's go research what science says is the age of the sun, what science says is the first fossils. And let's look in Genesis when those events happen. And over a period of many months, I built up, by doing the research on both sides, what both sides, meaning the Bible and the scientific side, say about 20 events. There's about 20 events I can extract from Genesis and science, and astonishingly, well, I expected it, but I didn't really expect it. It's like you believe that it's got to be, but when you actually see it happening, it gives you goosebumps. Those events all matched, except for one, within measurement error by science. And the astonishing thing is that the youngest biblical source is 800 years old, and the oldest scientific source that I'm using is about 30 years old. So science has only learned these numbers in the last 30 years, and by a simple multiplication of 7,000 times 1,000, no fancy numbers, no 3.1415, none of these fancy numbers in science, just a very simple set of numbers, consistently applied, no changes. All of the dates are predicted, the 13.7 for the billion years for the age of the universe, 4.5 for the sun, and so on. And that was just astonishing.
Danniel, when you were working in the space industry, what type of subjects did you come across through work that got you interested to study this matter?
Well, it goes all the way back to university and so on, but most recently, our company's done a fair amount of work with the Hubble Space Telescope, which has really been the number one scientific instrument to figure out what's going on in the cosmos. And therefore I'm exposed to that, and I've talked to the people that work on that, and I've seen it, and that just kind of, when you see all that, you can't come up with the answer that, it's 6 days and 6,000 years and the science must be wrong. You just can't. We have documented evidence that that's what it is. So that kind of redoubled my efforts to say we're looking at the same thing through two different glasses, the scientific and the religious, and we've got to see the same thing. At least that's the fundamental evidence. What happened when it happened.
Talk about the first appearance of animals.
Okay, so scientifically, what we've done is, and maybe I'll take an extra minute here to just explain this for a minute because everybody gets hung up about evolution. But scientifically, when something dies, its remains are left behind, and in many cases they are preserved very well. For example, there might be a flash flood, unfortunately, and a whole pile of animals get killed and humans at the same time, and they're buried immediately, and there they are, or there's a volcanic eruption or what have you. And we have many places where there's very good preservation of these fossilized remains, and we've dug them out in all the continents. And based on this, we've been able to establish what's called a fossil record, which is a record of all the fossils we've discovered and dated, and we know very precisely scientifically what lived when, what plant, what animal, what algae, when it lived, and many of them have gone extinct, and some of them still live. We know exactly when they appeared, and so on. So it's like having a photo album of your kids. You can't tell what was going on.
Hold that point. Danniel Friedman is our guest. The Genesis 1 Code. He's actually done the research to show that creation, it is creationism, not evolution. It was designed by God, the most intelligent of the designers.
For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong-Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933. Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
To travelers along the road of life who have fallen asleep at the wheel, to the many who woke up in time to avert disaster and get back on the righteous path. For the ones who crashed and survived and now adhere vigilantly to a virtuous and righteous path. Finally, Armstrong-Williams' much-anticipated new book, Reawakening Virtues, gives his insights into these daily challenges and much more. Reawakening Virtues is available in bookstores and at Amazon.com.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong-Williams.
You were using the metaphor as children in lunch boxes. Please continue.
Yeah, if we look at the photo album we keep for our kids, here's Johnny at 1, at 2, at 3, at 4, and so on. the fossil records like that. It says, at this point in time, the very first appearance of single-cell animals appeared. At this point in time, complex animals appeared. At this point in time, dinosaurs disappeared. At this point in time, man appeared. So we have a very clear record. Now, the theory of evolution is a theory that attempts to explain that record, and it is just a theory. So I put that aside. I just stick with the record. What you can see. Dig a hole, go down, check it out. There it is. Now, Genesis also has a record. It says at the beginning of day 5, let the waters teem. It says on day 6, God made the animals. Then Adam named the animals, and so on. So it has a record also. It talks about the birds. It talks about plants. It says God planted the garden. All of these events, from water animals to land animals to plants to human beings, are chronologically given in Genesis. We know what day they happen. We know what time of the day they happen from the sources. Exactly. Now, if you then take this knowledge from Genesis, put it through the scale factor, it coincides with a fossil record. It says, for example, at the beginning of day 5, that the waters teem. That means, according to all the commentaries, that's life in the waters, and that is microscopic life. Because it says later that he made fundamental animals. That statement, that the waters teem, was made 3.52 billion years ago. That is precisely the date of the earliest marine single subcellular cell fossils. Then in day 6, and at the end of hour 4, we are told that the animals were completed. That corresponds to 532 million years ago. That is the date of a very famous event in science called the Cambrian explosion. Explosion meaning that life exploded. We went from very, very simple, few cells, to complex animals that we would all recognize as pretty complex things, with complete body plans, with similar body plans to everything that exists today. Very, very complex, very, very quickly. Very difficult to explain. A challenge for Darwin, a challenge for the scientists today. It corresponds to God saying, I'm making the animals right now. Here it is, boys. I just got it done. And so on through the appearance of life. So that what happened and when it happened is matching what we see in the fossil record.
So let me interrupt you. Introduce Adam and Eve and the kind of relationship they had with the animals and the wildlife, and they were running around naked. And what did the fossil records and other records shows us that when sin came about, from your research, what happens when sin entered the planet?
Right, this is the most fascinating part. So as I did the research, and Genesis talks very explicitly about God said, and he made this and he made that, and we get all the animals and we get the planets and so on. But it doesn't say anything about life going extinct. Now, we know from the fossil record and from science that there has been these major extinctions. The most famous one that everybody's aware of is the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs all died at once, pretty quickly. But there have been 5 major extinctions of life in the last 500-600 million years, which are reasonably mysterious. So the question is, that has to be dealt with in the blueprint, right? I mean, it has to be there somewhere. And when one studies Genesis and actually the rest of the 5 books of Moses, it talks very clearly about the fact that the way we behave communally as humankind affects rain and affects vegetation. There's very specific paragraphs that say, if we obey the commandments, we'll have abundant food and abundant rain, and we'll collect our grain, and everything will be fine. And if we don't obey the commandments, the rain won't come, and the vegetation will change, and we'll go hungry, and things will die. So there's a direct correlation in the Bible between our behavior and the welfare of the planet. And of course, we see that today. It's very straightforward when we cause damage to the planet by deforestation and so on. So today it's hard to tell because I could be behaving poorly and you could be behaving well, and I don't know what communally that means. But when Adam and Eve existed, there was just two, so it's pretty easy. What were they up to? That was Adam and Eve's soul embodied all of humankind. And the sources tell us that Adam and Eve, of course, everybody's aware of the fundamental sin. But the sources also tell us that there were 4 steps before that sin. There were 4 other things that they did that kind of led to the eventual fundamental sin. So in all, there were 5 steps to the sin. They were all sins in themselves. We know them. The last step of eating of the forbidden fruit, and we are told when those events happened quite accurately in the Bible. And again, if I convert them, I get 5 dates. Those 5 dates correspond to the 5 extinctions of life on earth. Now, Genesis tells us that when Adam sinned, the earth was cursed, and then it tells us what happened to the earth. It tells us all the vegetation on earth changed, completely changed. And science tells us that at that same time, vegetation changed. The herbivores who eat the vegetation, many of them died off, and the carnivores who ate those herbivores, many of them died off, and that's what the extinction was. Now, there's a theory that what led to the vegetation changing is that a comet hit the Earth, and there was a big explosion, and the sun was covered, and the climate changed, and so on. But what we know for sure is that the vegetation changed and the animals died. And what Genesis is telling us, the vegetation changed and the animals died. Now, that happened because Adam sinned. We don't know how God brought about that. He could have sent a comet. He could have done something else that we're not told. But we are told that there was a vegetation change, and it's at the same time as the extinction, and we're told there's 4 more before that, and at the same time as the extinctions.
I don't know if I've ever focused so much on thinking about this awesome God. Some people just find it so hard that it's almost fantastical to believe that someone actually created that. What do you say? I mean, when you think about this awesome God, 6 days, and on the 7th day he rests, the fossil records, the vegetation, all absolutely supports Genesis in the Bible.
Yeah, it's very powerful, and it's even more powerful in that those documents are thousands of years old, and we're only discovering this scientifically now. But I think most of the great religions teach that one of the approaches to get closer to God is to study the creation, to see the handiwork, and to see what's behind it. And this kind of approach of really understanding it and matching it lets us really see, as you're pointing out, who's behind this. It's like admiring a piece of art and trying to learn more about the artist.
Give us some examples of the handiwork that we need to get in touch with so we can really see the ultimate intelligent designer.
Well, I think everybody sees this almost every day now, but we're in such an advanced technological stage we cannot take it a little bit for granted. But it's springtime, and you can see the birds and the bees and the flowers, and these are very complex things. And when you go further than that, the original thought in Darwin's time was that life started out pretty simple with single cells, and then got to much more complex things like our cells. But we know today by our study of DNA and genes that even that single, what was thought to be simple life, is unbelievably complex at the building level. That's a fairly recent discovery too. So even the simplest little organism we can find is unbelievably complex, beautiful, symmetrical, etc., etc., etc.
And you also have the records to show when man actually came on the scene from the creation.
Yeah. That's one of the most fascinating things, and that certainly was a surprise to me. I mean, we know scientifically that the first Homo sapiens appeared 200,000 years ago. That's the first record of Homo sapiens bones. We also know that there were other things that looked like us for almost 6 million years before that, and before that there were apes in the fossil record. Now, I'm not by any means suggesting that one came from the other. I'm just saying that's what the picture shows. That's when these things existed. But actually, when you read, and this is a big misconception, but almost everybody I've talked about, everybody thinks that Adam was one of us, just like us. But the scriptures are very, very clear that prior to the sin, Adam and Eve were divine beings, and there's descriptions which are undescribable of what that meant intellectually and physically and every other way. Like they had a skin of light, and so on. It's only after they sin that we're told they became like us. So the Adam and Eve that we read about in Genesis is kind of a partner with God, as we are, but we are a much smaller partner in the creation, making things better. They were massive partners intellectually and spiritually and physically. And they were around for a long time. They were around for several hours, which of course works out to several 100 million years prior to the sin. And the proof of that is right in the text. You know, if you read Genesis, it says God made the firmament.
Hold that. We want to come back. The Genesis code. Yes, the Genesis code. Genesis 1 code. Danniel Friedman. This is fascinating about creationism. We'll come back to Adam and Eve. They were here millions of years before the sin. We'll be back.
For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong-Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Hi, this is Armstrong Williams with an opportunity to own a piece of paradise in Nassau, Bahamas. Spectacular land prices, 8,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet lot, affordable prices, hilltop properties with views of the magnificent sea. Just call 242-677-3120 or 3121 or go to info@rightsidewire.com and leave your information.
Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933. Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
So, Danniel, you're saying to us that Adam and Eve were around millions of years before they committed the sin?
Yes.
You must explain this.
Well, let me just show you one simple thing from Scripture. So, when you read Genesis, it says God made something and then he called it something. So he made the firmament, he called it the heavens. For example, he made light, called it the day. But when we get to the animals, it says God made the animals, and then it says he didn't call them anything. He went to Adam and said, Adam, you call them. You name the animals. Now, most interpreters of that say, well, Adam was around when God made the animals to give them the names. So it shows you that Adam was there as a partner in creation. He was around for a few hours. If a day is 2.5 billion years, an hour is about 100 million years. And that Adam, as I mentioned earlier, was nothing like a Homo sapiens. He was a divine being, and he was around. But at some point he sins, and he changes completely. We see that in the Genesis account in terms of clothing and so on. That's deeper than that. His skin changes, size change, all of these things change, and then we have the appearance of Homo sapiens, and that coincides with the scientific understanding of when Homo sapiens came along.
Is there a reason why God waited on the sixth day because he was lonely to create man? Did he understand on a deeper level that man would be destructive and destroy what he created in perfection? Because what we're realizing here is not the animals that destroyed anything. It was what God created, man and woman, that eventually impacted everything that God created in those 6 days before creating man.
Right, and the whole idea was not to create a bunch of robots that do what they're supposed to do, which is what animals do. They just follow their instinct. They don't make moral choices. They don't do something right or wrong. They just do what they were programmed to do. The only creature on Earth that has free will and free choice, and therefore can make a moral choice, is man. And then when we make the wrong moral choices, we do hurt the creation, and when we make the right moral choices, we do fix the creation. When we give charity, when we help another human being and so on, we're fixing the world. When we, God forbid, rob somebody, we're hurting the world. Now that's at our level. At Adam's level, of course, everything was amplified dramatically because he was so divine and so large. So his sin was a much bigger issue. But that's exactly what happened, and we have to repair that.
Danniel, with all the crazy things we see going on in the world today, unprecedented earthquakes, floods, tornadoes, and natural disasters, what is this saying about the human behavior we have here on Earth?
Well, that's a little bit beyond my scope, but the Bible would argue that we through our behavior create problems or create good things, and you can come to your own conclusion by watching the news about what human beings are doing and what's happening. But the Bible would argue that we're causing these problems, a lot of these problems.
So listen, help us understand Revelation. What in the Bible that you've read that makes you believe that God will come back and destroy all this?
Why destroy all this?
He said it would be destroyed. I mean, obviously, you get into Noah's Ark, and when rain was first visited upon the earth, and he destroyed it, but he came back. He still left life form on the earth. What is it? People often talk about Armageddon in the last days. How does that fit into this design?
Okay, what the scriptures are telling us is that there's this kind of cycles, and we are currently in a biblical cycle that's 6,000 years. We're in the year 5772, and then after the 6,000, sometime around the year 6,000, the Messianic era is supposed to start and go for the 7th millennium, just like the 6 days of the week and the rest day. And we kind of have the chance to get this right ourselves, or at some point it's kind of imposed on us. And if it is imposed on us, it could be a little bit painful, some of these descriptions. Now, some of the descriptions, I'm not an expert in that at all, about whether they're right or wrong, but there is supposed to come an era in the next couple of 100 years where we will enter a Messianic era, and that process might be painful, might be like a birth process, if we are not ready for it, and not everybody will make it, and that's where all those descriptions come from.
Talk about the records that show that nothing happened on the seventh day. that he did rest. And did that mean that man rested, the animals rested? What did that mean back in terms of your research?
Okay, in general, rest is a little bit misunderstood. The rest as described for the Sabbath is rest from creative activity. So, moving your furniture in your house is okay, even though we think that's quite difficult and quite exhausting. So say I spend the whole day rearranging the furniture in my house. That would be quite an exhausting day. Well, for God, that would be rest because there's no creative activity. However, if I take pen to paper and I write a few lines of poetry, that's not rest. That's creative activity. I created something new. It's going to impact people, the world, and so on. So when it says that God rested, it means he ceased, or man, for that matter, he ceased from creative activity. And it's a little bit akin to sleep. You know, when we sleep, we don't die. We continue to breathe. We continue to digest. Life goes on. But we're not building new houses. We're not starting new radio talk shows. We're not changing the world. Life is just kind of going on. So that's what rest means. And in science, we can actually see these periods of rest. We see periods where there's intense activity in the creation, both in cosmology, in the universe, and in life. And then there's periods where things are kind of running their course. And they actually, is another fascinating thing, the periods where things are kind of running their course correspond to the night time in the 6 days of creation, which is, of course, very long each day. And the times where things are actively changing, new animals are appearing in the fossil record, that corresponds to when God is saying or making or doing something during the day. Because the scriptures tells us that the day was 12 hours of work and 12 hours of effectively rest. And we actually see that in the scientific fossil record and cosmology record, these long periods where things just kind of go on without, if you're doing the news, you wouldn't have much in the news during the night, but during the day you'd have a lot in the news. And then you just come on every hour and say, it's more or less, it kept on developing more or less the same. But if you came on the news during the day, there would be lots to talk about.
Explain to our audience where you were challenged in composing this Genesis 1 code and trying to correlate the fossil records and everything else to show that creationism did exist and it did take 6 days and the seventh day to rest. Where were you most challenged and how were you able to overcome that challenge? Or did you overcome it?
I was challenged in two aspects. In the overall aspect of, what is a creation day, and that's what took the longest time to figure out and see, and in the end it came down to being 1,000 times 7,000 times 365, incredibly simple. And the second challenge came when I put all the pieces together and I compared, as I mentioned earlier, in the Genesis 1 code I talk about 20 events roughly that I'm able to extract from Genesis. Genesis is not a science book. Genesis is a manual for life, but it does contain some key things, like when the sun was made and so on. So I'm able to extract about 20 events. And one of those didn't match, which was a bit perplexing. And in fact, it was kind of an important one. It was the Earth, the age of the Earth. Didn't match. So that was a bit of a challenge. It's still a bit of an open challenge for me. It's ironic in that the whole argument between science and religion started because a geologist discovered a couple hundred years ago that the Earth was older than 6,000 years and therefore older than what the Bible seemed to imply. And now when I come full around 200 years later and get everything working, I discover the Bible says that the Earth is older than science. On the other side, now, because the Bible says, according to the work I've done in Genesis 1 code, that the Earth is older than what science says. So that's an unresolved issue. However, my research has revealed that in most of the events we have in science, we're able to establish when they happened from observation, not from theory. So we can dig a hole in the ground and see the fossil. In the case of the Earth, that's not true. In the case of the Earth, we cannot establish how old the Earth just from observation, because the Earth is a living planet, and we have volcanism, and we have plate tectonics, and we have erosion, and we actually can't go anywhere on Earth today and find a rock that existed at the beginning when Earth was made. Everything's changed. It's rained and it's moved around and so on. So we can't find the original rocks. If we go to the moon, which we did a while back, we find the original rocks. Nothing happens in the moon. There's no atmosphere. There's no volcanoes. It's static. So we don't actually have an exact date for the age of the Earth from observation. We have from theory, and very compelling theory in science. And that doesn't match the Genesis date. All the other ones do, the other 19 do, but this one does not match. So that's an interesting open question. I'm hoping enough scientists will listen to this and go work on it.
When we come back, we want to talk about the heavens. And we want to talk about those 5 things that led to the ultimate sin by Adam and Eve, because I think it's important that our audience hears it. Our very good special guest, Danniel Friedman, Genesis 1 Code. We'll be back.
Hello, my name is Ron Moulton. I'm running as a Republican for the City Council in the nation's capital, a political arena dominated by the Democratic Party. I'm seeking office in Ward 7, overwhelmed by unemployment and poverty. For the first time in decades, we have an opportunity to be elected as the people that need the representation the most are now responding to the principles that will uplift them. For more information about my values and to donate, please visit www.ronmoulton.com.
For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong-Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com. To travelers along the road of life who have fallen asleep at the wheel, to the many who woke up in time to avert disaster and get back on the righteous path. For the ones who crashed and survived and now adhere vigilantly to a virtuous and righteous path. Finally, Armstrong-Williams' much-anticipated new book, Reawakening Virtues, gives his insights into these daily challenges and much more. Reawakening Virtues is available in bookstores and at Amazon.com.
Hi, this is Armstrong Williams with an opportunity to own a piece of paradise in Nassau, Bahamas. Spectacular land prices, 8,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet lot, affordable prices, hilltop properties with views of the magnificent sea. Just call 242-677-3120 or 3121 or go to info@rightsidewire.com and leave your information.
Most Americans simply have never been taught the basics of money management, let alone how to secure their financial future. But there is hope. Financial Education and Literacy Advisors, also known as FELA, does what others don't. FELA teaches financial education. If you'd like more information about providing a financial wellness program for your employees, or a credit-bearing college course in personal finance, or other valuable programs, please visit myfela.com. That's myfela.com, or send an email to info@myfela.com.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
So, Danniel, what has your research, and obviously you cannot find fossil records because nothing dies in heaven, but what is it that you can glean from your research to help the curiosity about heaven?
Well, I guess the most important thing is that there's at least for the people that are concerned about whether the scriptures are correct or not. Here is a whole long dissertation on how everything matches the blueprint in terms of life on Earth and cosmology. Well, the blueprint also talks about heaven, so if it matches all that, that should match heaven for those that have any doubt. And so I think the different religions have different, slightly different interpretations of what the Bible is telling us. But fundamentally it is telling us that there is a soul, and that soul is eternal, and the body is just a vessel that we come into for a specified period of time to do some good work, and the soul goes on, and heaven has to do something with where the souls live, and so on. So the scriptures are describing the earth quite accurately. They should also be describing heaven quite accurately.
You know, you mentioned, and this is so much to do, I just want to get back to briefly some of the things that led, other things that Adam and Eve were involved in before the forbidden tree, the fruit from the forbidden tree.
Sure, that's very, very interesting. The sources tell us that to get to serious sin, and we might think eating from a fruit tree is not too serious, but if God actually told you to do that directly, and you saw that, it's reasonably serious, and you had a good reason for it. So at their level of revelation and spirituality, this was a pretty serious thing. But the scriptures tell us that we never get to sin in kind of one step. We get there in multiple steps, and as I mentioned before, these happen to correspond to the extinctions of life. So kind of the first step, and we will all recognize this in ourselves, is ego. The moment we don't nullify ourselves to a higher authority, and we start believing that we are the cause of everything, and we are great, then we can break the rules and we can do what we want. And as they say, power corrupts. But even at that individual level, that happens to us. So the first thing that happened to Adam is that when he kind of stood up after having been, it's described that he was molded in the ground, and the soul was breathed into him, and then he stood up. And the sources describe that the angels thought he was completely divine and began worshiping him. And right there we're told that he became aware of his ego. He became aware that he was a separate entity, that he had extreme powers. And that was kind of the first problem. He kind of let the thing get to his head. And then there's several other examples. Some of the more interesting ones is that him and Eve were immodest in terms of their sexual behavior in front of the animals. That's right in Genesis. And that's another thing that kind of leads you to say, well, maybe I can do things, other things. So he went through a number of these steps. As his ego got a little bit stronger, Eve got into all kinds of basically gossiping, which is one of not allowed 10 commandments with the snake, whatever that was, and then their immodest behavior, and that was all kind of steps that led to the point where, okay, now we got a big test, and they failed it. Both failed it.
Danniel, this is Robin Banks again. Many of us may have a family member who may have lost the way, or that certain bright moment is not there. They just may not believe. What can we point to in a very simplistic way for them to show them, hey, look, this is intelligent creationism is not just a random thing. It had a force behind it.
Well, this is exactly the motivation for my book, and the scary thing is that family member is likely to be our kids, because the statistics are showing that those 65 and over believe the Bible is divine and believe it is correct, and only 30% of those between 18 and 25 believe the Bible is correct.
Wow.
So for the first time, we have a generational, for the first time that the science education in schools, the Discovery Channel, National Geographic, everything is sufficiently strong that it's become crystal clear to our kids that there's a big disagreement here, and this is causing them a lot of consternation. So that was fundamentally the motivation for me to do the work, as I talked to my nephews and so on, and to write the book. And my answer to that is that the biggest thing that's kind of taking us away, some people have a personal experience and they get upset, and they blame the Creator for it. That's a harder issue to deal with. But most of the move away, especially in the younger generation, has to do with, I just watched Discovery Channel, I just saw fossils that are hundreds of millions of years old. I just saw a Hubble picture that came from light from 8 billion years ago, and I just went to Sunday school and said 6,000 years. And what we have to tell them is that discrepancy is not there. Science is studying the creation, the Bible is describing the creation, and they are studying and describing the same thing, and what happened and when it happened is in agreement. And read the Genesis 1 code, and we don't have this argument that everybody thinks that this is at odds with each other. It's not at odds with each other, and it's actually an astounding and beautiful agreement. It's like discovering the blueprint to your home and seeing that, wow, everything here is exactly like it was supposed to be. Obviously, the builder built it. It didn't just assemble itself out of wood in a tornado.
It is fascinating to me that with all the technological advances that we have and what we're able to do with technology and engineering and the things that we've been able to develop that was all from creation, it does seem that the people who were more slightly removed from this story and this creation were the real geniuses of the time, because they did not have the kinds of things that we work with, the technology and advances in medicine and everything else. But you look at the pyramids and the things that they were able to create, and people have to in wonderment, how was it possible to do that? So could we actually say, as the ages continue to roll, that people move farther and farther away from God and the intelligent design?
I'm hoping the exact opposite will happen. I mean, it's somewhat similar to my personal trip. I was born and told about God and religion, and it all makes sense to me. And in fact, we're discovering scientifically that we all have a propensity to believe. We're born believers. And then as I went through science education, it looked like everything was explainable. But when I got deeper into it, which most people don't, because they move to another career at that point before they get to fourth-year university in science, I found that the science was missing a whole pile of answers, and we should talk about that because I cover that in the book. So I think we're kind of in an era right now that technology looks incredibly powerful. I mean, look, it's magic. I can talk on my phone to anybody. Not connected to anything. I can control my climate, my weather. My cars are amazing. I can fly anywhere I want. But if you go past that and you look at what's been discovered with the Hubble Space Telescope, if you look at the details of the fossil record, we're discovering that miracles must have occurred somewhere, that it didn't occur naturally. So we're actually more in tune. Now, it's not being taught about too much, but it is there, and hopefully it'll get out. But we have discovered that the things are even more miraculous than we ever thought. And when you discover that, you start getting back to God. And in fact, a lot of the prophecies we were talking earlier about Revelation, the Messianic era, says that we're going to kind of come together, and we're going to come to understand this partly through science, partly through studying the creation.
Quickly tell us in the couple of minutes we have left the things that science just has fallen short, the areas.
So science has about people would argue with me about three big problems. In cosmology, which is study of the universe, the Big Bang Theory, and it's unbelievably powerful, unbelievably beautiful, explains everything. There's only one tiny problem. The very beginning, for the theory to work, at the very beginning of the mathematics, you have to put in the mass of a proton. You have to put in the gravitational force. You have to put in all these things that we observe. And in the last 20 years, we've discovered this so-called fine-tuning problem, whereby if we vary any one of those things, nothing works. Now, that doesn't make any sense, because scientifically people think this kind of things just came about at random chance, and all of a sudden the universe developed. But it's so finely tuned. It's such a clockwork at the very beginning. And we're just discovering every day more and more how tuned that is, that nobody can explain that. Now, in Genesis, we are told when God is using natural means to do things and when He's not. And almost the whole Genesis account, we are told, don't have time to go into it now, but it's very well explained in the Genesis 1 code, we're told it's using natural means. He's using the forces of nature to make things happen. But In the first 4 days, which are all about cosmology, in one place we're told that he's not using the forces of nature, that he's doing a miraculous event, and that's right at the beginning, and it corresponds exactly with where science fails. In the case of life, there's two things we struggle with in science. One is the very sudden appearance of animals in the Cambrian explosion. It's not the way Darwin said, slowly.
Thank you, Danniel Friedman. Genesis 1 Code. They must go and buy the book. This has been one of the most provocative discussions. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Hello, my name is Ron Moulton. I'm running as a Republican for the City Council in the nation's capital, a political arena dominated by the Democratic Party. I'm seeking office in Ward 7, overwhelmed by unemployment and poverty. For the first time in decades, we have an opportunity to be elected as the people that need the representation the most are now responding to the principles that will uplift them. For more information about my values and to donate, please visit www.ronmoulton.com.
For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong-Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org. Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933.
Most Americans simply have never been taught the basics of money management, let alone how to secure their financial future. But there is hope. Financial Education and Literacy Advisors, also known as FELA, does what others don't. FELA teaches financial education. If you'd like more information about providing a financial wellness program for your employees, or a credit-bearing college course in personal finance, or other valuable programs, please visit myfela.com. That's myfela.com, or send an email to info@myfela.com.
Soul food. No, I like it. Soul food. Henry soul food. No, we need it. Soul food. Henry soul food.
Home of the sweet potato pie. Even the keenest taste buds will tell you the best food on the planet. Large enough to serve you and small enough to know you. So get the Henrys at 5431 Indian Head Highway, Oxon Hill, Maryland, or give us a call at 301-749-6856.